Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Go on, hurry up. Jenna opened the door to the house and almost forced her son Anthony in. Mom, when are you coming to get me? The 5-year-old boy walked reluctantly, clutching his worn jacket to his mother. I don't know when. I'm sick of your questions. When I'm free, I'll come and get you. Mom, are you going to work? Please buy me some shoes. I've got a hole in the bottom. The boy in the elevator lifted his foot and wanted to show his mother the sole. Jenna didn't look at her son's shoes, just got angry. You shouldn't have gotten in a puddle with your friends. You're wearing all kinds of things on fire. Before you, Aunt Kathy's son wore them and nothing. How many were they? She shushed Anthony to the door and rang the bell. The door was opened by Wendy. She was surprised to see Jenna and her son on the doorstep. She had plans of her own for tonight and didn't want to sit with her friend's son. Hey, I'll leave you to it. Because last time this rascal opened the gas burner in my room, he wanted tea, you see. It's the middle of the night. I wanted to go myself. Wendy made a puzzled face and stared at the ceiling. The neighbor's door opened and a woman came out carrying a bag of garbage. She went to the garbage chute and heard a child crying. Wendy's door slammed shut. She flatly refused to babysit her friend's baby. Her personal life had only recently begun to settle, and she couldn't pass up such a chance. That's all right. You can stay home alone. I'll turn on some cartoons, and you can watch and go to bed. I'm afraid to be alone. I was scared to whisper to Anthony so as not to make my mother angry. Jenna had already led him by the hand to the elevator when she heard the voice of a neighbor, a friend. Let me sit with him. I really don't have any toys at home, but it's better than leaving a child alone. You really sit down. Jenna was happy and shoved the baby with force into her neighbor's room. She symbolically covered her ears to avoid hearing his cries. And from the roof of the elevator cabin, she exhaled in relief. Why are you crying? Baby? Come on in. Mommy will come for you. As soon as she's free. She's not coming. Anthony cried, gagging, and refused to undress. But how can she not come? Then we will come to her ourselves. Mother must have gone to work. She looked frightened at the boy, pretending to be calm. She had already regretted taking the initiative in seeing where his mother lived and who she was. And she didn't know. One thing that was comforting was that it was a person known to the neighbor. Remembering this, Miranda asked Anthony, Do you know Aunt Wendy well? Do you want us to go to her and ask her where your mother went and when she is coming? I don't know. The boy wouldn't stop crying. I've only been to see her once. Come on, don't cry. You want some pancakes? I just made them. They're still hot. She noticed the baby was quiet, so she started undressing him, whispering, I have a kitten too. His name is Fluffy. Let's call him. After several attempts at Kitty, little blue ball of fur came and pulled up meow. Kitty. Anthony smiled and his face changed. He immediately smiled and seemed to forget all his troubles. Can I pet him? Of course you can. Let's wash our hands first. You came in from the street, didn't you? She took him into the bathtub and washed his hands and face. Now the boy did not look crying, and only a slight blush decorated his cheeks. While Miranda was washing his hands, she noticed that his clothes were clean, but they did not fit him at all. Alas, the brown sweater had short sleeves and his pants were a couple of sizes too big. Are you from kindergarten? I asked him, not understanding how he could take his child to daycare and visits in such a uniform. Yes, Anthony answered briefly, and then got in the kitten's face. Look, he's scratching. He's little, silly still. Miranda looked at the pillow. She thought he couldn't hear her. The boy got carried away and with a contented face stroked the furry lump, which sniffed the boy, released his claws and showed him who was boss. That hurt. Are you scratching? Angrily, said Anthony and offensively crawled away from the offender. Now the kitten got up a funny pose on his hind legs and with a sprawling claws threateningly went to the boy. Let's go have tea and pancakes. He's not going anywhere. She washed his hands once more and put him at the table. So what's your name? We never really got to know each other. The girl brought the child some jam and condensed milk. May I? He asked, pointing a blue finger at the condensed milk. Of course you can. So what's your name? And why is your finger blue? Anthony I am, and my finger. The boy fell silent and began to fly off the pancakes. She did not distract him by asking questions. And after eating, they sat down by the TV. Anthony was not very talkative and was reluctant to answer questions. He was 6 years old and spoke well, but little. But he spared no words when talking to the kitten. Don't you have a cat at home? Miranda looked outside the window, where it was already dark. No, mother does not allow it. Where is his mother, and when will she come? What circumstances could push her to leave her son with a strange woman? Miranda's mind flashed. She was replaying the situation and trying to put herself in her place, thinking that his mother must be going crazy with excitement right now. You sit down for a while. No, come with me. Let's go see Wendy. I need to ask her something. The girl put on Anthony, and when she put on her shoes, she noticed that his boot had been torn for a long time. Miranda sighed. You tell me how you only walk like that. And a sock all wet. What is your mother looking at? The boy was silent. Making a serious face, he was afraid to go out again. Going into the entryway, Miranda knocked on the next door. Wendy didn't open it for a long time, but voices could clearly be heard coming from the apartment. But what is it again? Wendy opened the door with a disgruntled face and looked at Miranda and Anthony. His mother is an acquaintance of yours, after all. When is she coming? It is past the baby's bedtime. Miranda looked at her neighbor, who changed suitors every week, and often her passion was flowing over the edge with loud, unpleasant sounds, turning from one to the other into laughter and shouting. How should I know? Why did you take him? She brought him to me last time. I stayed home for 2 days because of him. She gave birth, let her babysit him. What a cuckoo, she gets alimony, and others have to take care of the baby. Wait, you mean like other people? I don't get it. Miranda looked at her neighbor, didn't know what she was talking about. What are you staring at? Could not stand the heavy stare Wendy. She takes Anthony from one acquaintance to another. She's making her own life for herself. She'll come after him. Don't worry about it. I just don't know when. I also got scared last time she brought him to me and didn't pick up the phone all day. I even wanted to call the guardianship office and give him to them. Then I felt sorry for him. I thought the guardianship would get attached and wouldn't let him go. I didn't want to take the sin on my soul. Some kind of mother there is, and she gets good alimony. I do not know what is wrong with her. Maybe she'll come to her senses. In the end, she'll find a man and settle down. So you have her number. Give her a call. She wasn't upset to hear all that. Then she looked at the face of Anthony, who, from the conversation, understood a lot more than he should have, and she fell silent. The boy puffed up his cheeks, his chubby lips rising to keep from crying. His chin became bulging, heavily contoured, and his overall expression evoked heartbreaking pity. I'm busy right now. I'll call you later and let you know if she doesn't come herself. You call now, though. Since I was already distracted, Miranda said seriously and opened the door of her apartment. Come on, baby, I'm going to tell you a fairy tale. You have never heard such a story. Miranda gently put her hands on the boy's shoulders and led him home. Anthony continued to sulk. There were tears in his eyes. Don't listen, you've got a lot of her. She knows she'd look at herself. And I'm glad to have you as a guest unexpectedly for Anthony, said Miranda. Come to me at least every day. She hugged the boy, and he held out his little hands to her. Let's go to the apartment. The good thing is that tomorrow is Saturday, there is no need to go to the kindergarten, and I will be at home. The boy calmed down and followed the girl. She is 23 years old, but she has not yet met the kind of young man she was looking for. She had high moral expectations of the candidates. Unfortunately, not a single candidate has lived up to them. She did not care about the man's financial status. She was a literate girl herself and understood that money without intelligence does nothing. She often had to see people losing everything in the slot machines that stood in the basement of her house. From unpleasant chance encounters with their tenants. She even considered moving in, but the place was shut down and the tenants calmed down. Still, in spite of everything, she considered one candidate. It turned out to be Alex. They met by chance at the hospital where Miranda worked in the procedure room. Handsome young men were a rarity there. I did not take my eyes off of him, nor out of astonishment. What attracted his attention? Her appearance did not leave Alex indifferent, and her white robe, for some reason, aroused particular confidence. She had a very cute appearance, which caused a sincere smile of others. Here and Anthony discerned her pleasant features, and already without fear he behaved almost like at home, occasionally looking at unfamiliar objects. Just before I could start telling him the story, Anthony fell asleep. The nerve-wracking that his mother subjected him to, without thinking about it, severely wears out the still immature psyche of the baby. "Are you awake?" Miranda read the message from Alex and was glad. Any news from him made the girl smile. "I'm going to," she answered and sent a funny smiley face. "I'll be there tomorrow." They had already spent 3 weekends together, and they didn't want to change traditions. Miranda looked at the child and sighed heavily. "Come only I will probably have a nephew. Do you mind the baby?" Miranda did not want to explain the situation in messages. Yes, and the baby by this time could have been taken away. "How old is he?" Alex asked. "About 5 years old, maybe. That's the way the aunt is." "You don't know the age of your nephew." "Okay, wait with the gift." Miranda went to the neighbors again, but no one opened the door. It was quite quiet in her apartment. What a mess, quiet, Miranda said to herself and went back inside. She walked over to the bed, saw that Anthony was wet-headed, wearing a sweater. He was hot, but she didn't dare undress him. She was a little scared. After all, a stranger's child. She came into the kitchen, opened a window to make the apartment fresher. The spring air quickly filled the entire space of the small apartment. And Anthony dove even deeper into a rainbow nap, despite the spring fresh air, tiredness, and the late hour she still could not fall asleep. The baby agonized through the night, while Miranda listened to his every rustle and sound in the entryway. It seemed to her that either his mother or a neighbor was about to come. But there was silence in the hallway. Miranda had thought of so many things during that night that she would not have fallen asleep by morning. She felt sorry for the boy, and what to do with him. She did not know. When it began to bloom, Anthony stirred and sat up on the bed. "I have to pee," he said, half asleep. The girl took him to the bathroom and decided to undress him anyway, so he would be comfortable to sleep. How small and skinny he was. Anya's first thought came to mind. His legs were like a grasshopper's, only pale with blue veins and small bruises. The skin was soft, so soft it was scary to even touch it. The dim light of the lamps from the hallway fell on her blonde hair, clean hair that was merrily clumped on her head. And her long eyelashes were constantly maintained on her closed eyes. "Didn't Mother come in?" asked Anthony. "No, not yet. You sleep, she'll be here soon." Miranda covered him with a thin blanket and, closing the window, thought what a happiness it must be to be a mother of such a baby, to lie next to him, to run her hand through the fine fluffy hair. And what could this happiness be exchanged for? He was a handsome and quick-witted boy. What millions of people dream of. But his mother was not one of them. Not that she was cruel or mean. She just had absolutely no maternal instinct. She treated her son as an outsider child. It was as if someone had brought him to her temporarily. Jenna did not share the opinion that children needed attention. She rarely thought about her son's needs and was only forcefully fulfilling her motherly duties. Jenna was getting married when she was already pregnant. Perhaps without this reason, the wedding would not have happened. Nevertheless, even a life together with a man at that time did not suit her. She wanted attention, but was unwilling to give anything in return. Her husband could not stand it for long, leaving the family when Anthony was only a year old. He left him for a woman who was willing to support the family home and take care of him 24/7. And he was more than happy with that. Hey, Anthony didn't feel much affection. And after his daughter was born to another family, he very rarely paid any attention to his son. Anthony saved the daycare center. The teachers loved him very much and pitied him, noticing his mother's cold attitude. He enjoyed going there and always stayed until almost late at night, watching the other parents eagerly picking up their children early. Jenna gave birth to Anthony at age 30. She spent her alimony solely on her appearance, dressing her child in the rags given by kind-hearted neighbors and acquaintances. Jenna did not want to work. Occasionally, the thought slipped into her mind, but she never got beyond thinking about it. A child was the last thing on her mind. Even so, Anthony loved his mother as much as anyone his age did. They lived in a one-room apartment where the boy slept on a cot while his mother slept on a spacious bed that would have fit 3 people. But Jenna didn't like sharing her personal space with her son, and the boy had long ago resigned himself to his own unnecessity. Not knowing any other attitude, who could have imagined that in her 36th year Jenna would fall in love, as she thought, with the man she truly loved, who was also 5 years younger than her, lived in another city, but distance didn't matter to her now. And before every weekend she gave someone, Anthony rushed to the object of her adoration. "You were waiting for me?" joyfully asked Jenna, as she crossed the threshold of the house of Jason, who made a nonchalant face, as if to squeeze out a smile. She didn't want to notice that she wasn't particularly welcome in the house. "Look what I bought you." She took an expensive tablet out of the bag and handed it to Jacob. Jacob's face immediately changed and he scrutinized the purchase. "Thank you. I didn't expect that. Where do you get the money from?" Jenna smiled, but didn't say anything. She said she bought the thing with child support, thereby leaving the child without a livelihood. She didn't feel like it. She didn't feel guilty about her son because she only wanted to live for today. However, Jenna had her own plans for Jacob. She dreamed of moving in with him in the 3-room apartment his grandmother had left him. But what about her son? She didn't know. "I left him with an acquaintance. I want him to meet you, though, so badly." Jenna decided to prepare the ground, and the words rolled off her tongue. "I think it's a bad idea. I don't like children," shortly replied. Jacob, looking at the clipboard, "He's my quiet one." Jenna wanted to continue, but it was obvious to Jacob that her son is of absolutely no interest to him. "Would you like some wine?" asked the man. Jenna agreed in frustration and moved closer with a fake smile. Anthony woke up and began to ask Miranda about her mother again. She had nothing to say, and she immediately changed the subject, saying that perhaps an uncle with a gift was coming to visit them. By the time Alex arrived, everything was ready. Miranda fed the cat fried potatoes and poured him some juice. How delicious! And the boy nodded, looking at the playing kitten. There was a knock at the door, and the little boy was frightened into silence. "Do not be afraid. It's probably Uncle Alex came, or your mom." She opened the door on the threshold and saw Alex standing there with full bags. "Did you rob the store?" asked, delighted at his arrival, Miranda. "But where is your nephew?" Smiling, Alex took out a huge box with a remote-controlled car. "Come on in." Alex went into the room and handed the frightened boy a huge box. "What is it?" "For me." Anthony saw such a big gift for the first time in his life. Jenna, of course, spoiled her son with toys, but only those that were given to her for free by people she knew. They weren't necessary. They weren't bad toys. Often they looked like new, but in a way that the kid didn't get in a box even for the holidays. Of course you did, and who else? Alex also experienced joy at the sight of the great happiness in the boy's eyes. Now that's something. Anthony spun the box, not believing his eyes. After Alex undressed, he put the batteries in the remote control, and they had fun trying out the purchase. The cat, at the sight of a loud machine, shoved himself into a corner and started hissing, and then crawled under the sofa and watched the unidentified object for a long time from there. The whole apartment was not filled with some kind of childlike joy, where everyone was happy except for the gun. But he, too, was merrily running after the car in half an hour. "Can I talk to you?" Miranda called Alex in the kitchen and told him everything. "You are really something. If I were you, I would be afraid to take someone else's baby." He did not say it reproachfully, but thoughtfully and sadly. "Go and see your neighbor. She's probably here by now, and I will sit with Alex." Alex took me to the door and started to play with the child. "And will you take the baby car from me when my mom comes to get me?" Sadly, Anthony asked. "No, of course not. Who takes away presents?" Anthony glowed again and began to study the present thoroughly. She got through to her neighbor, and Wendy immediately slipped her, written down on a piece of paper phone number. She did not ask anything about the cat and quickly slammed the door. It was as if she'd done a great favor when she got through to her mother from home. Anthony got very excited and, leaving the toy behind, asked to speak to her. "Sit there quietly. I'll come and get you later. Put your auntie on the phone." Jenna said this so loudly that she and Alex standing next to her could all hear and be horrified. Not one kind word she said to the child in her irritated voice. "Hello," she said, and all the words she wanted to say somehow disappeared from her mind. "Oh, good afternoon. Thank you so much for agreeing to sit with Anthony." Jenna spoke in an affectionate voice. "I am so grateful to you. If you only knew," she went on. "I've had a bit of an emergency. Could you pick him up at your place tomorrow? Are you sure you will come for him tomorrow?" Miranda asked incredulously. "I have to work on Monday, and the child is in daycare. I understand, of course, I will come. You have helped me out so much. Thank you very much." Jenna finished and turned off the phone. "Well, at least the phone number. Now we know her," Alex said. After all, there was nothing more to say. Anthony, after the conversation with his mother, he was sad again. This time, Alex questioned him. How did they live there? But the boy answered reluctantly, and there was not much to tell. "Well, maybe we can go to an amusement park or something." Since he's staying till tomorrow, Alex offered to tell us what's wrong with someone else's child. Miranda was skeptical of the idea. But Anthony's eyes were already burning, and he said quietly, "I will not tell anyone that I am a stranger." You see, Alex became animated. "Nobody will ever know. Get ready, come on. You should not sit at home on your day off. It's springtime." Miranda began to get ready and remembered that the boy had bad shoes. No can do," she said. Alex showed his shoe. "What kind of mother is that?" He cursed and began to gather. "Where are you going?" "To get shoes. Where else?" "Bring a bag to intercept a sample." Miranda laughingly handed Alex the bag, where he loaded Anthony's old shoes and asked him, "Do they pinch your foot?" "No," quietly Anthony replied. "Only the sock gets wet." "I see," said Alex and walked out the door. They had an unforgettable day for Anthony. The boy was so happy that he stopped asking about his mother, and after the sea of impressions, he fell asleep immediately after returning home. They went around all the rides, had lunch at the cafe, where Anthony really liked it. There he ate with great appetite, bouncing with his little feet in new boots. Miranda was glad that Alex perceived the situation in this way and not otherwise, and so she was even more imbued with this guy. The next day early in the morning, Alex came again and again with a gift. This time he brought a construction set. What did he regret? It took him more than 3 hours to put it together. Anthony was very happy and already sadly waited for his mother. Alex waited for his mother. He was impatient to see the woman. I don't know whether it was curiosity to look into her eyes or anger. My mother didn't like me either. I came from a similar family myself. Alex lowered his eyes and thought about something. Memory took him far away, where memories became, flashing by, like a movie, gray and gloomy. Alex even felt a chill and goosebumps ran down his skin. He distinctly smelled poverty and indifference. "You what?" Miranda shooed him away. "Are you all right? Are you pale?" "I'm fine." Alex came to his senses and smiled at the mug of hot tea the girl put in front of him. He hadn't even noticed. The crumb was beautiful and painted. It had warm, pleasant words written on it, which he had missed so much as a child. There were 7 of us in the family. Can you imagine? With a sad smile, said Alex in the corner. Wow. Miranda was surprised, because she looked at him and guessed that he was from a large family. In Miranda's mind, people who have a lot of relatives were usually exposed to their calls all the time. And Alex's phone rarely showed any signs of life. Your mother is a real heroine. She couldn't believe his words until now. How can I say? Who to be born to? You don't ask for a baby, and everyone wants to be happy. Anyway, I'm not in favor of quantity in such a matter. Who knows? Anthony, she seemed to have one, but that didn't help either. Would there have been a brother or sister? Maybe he wouldn't have been so lonely? No, he couldn't. There would just be one more unhappy person in the world. You sound so sure. It's scary, isn't it? Miranda sat down next to Alex, leaning slightly against him. There were 7 of us. Don't forget that. Alex smiled sadly again and looked away. Where are your brothers and sisters now? Miranda was frightened and jumped out and looked into the room where Anthony was playing on the floor. My mother died when I was 8. Stroke. Then my father remarried. Yeah, don't look at me. So Alex laughed when he saw Miranda's stretched out face. He also had a son by his new wife. Was she mute, by the way? Probably not, she couldn't speak, so she got married. Miranda didn't have the same surprise on her face. I somehow didn't think of that. Alex also smiled sincerely, and even his eyes sparkled. Then we all went away. The rest of us went to our relatives. Thanks for not saying no. Everything is all right. Everybody's alive. Just no family as such. Every man for himself. What's stopping you from seeing me now? Talk? Miranda asked. She felt sorry for Alex. I've thought many times. Everybody wants to meet. You know, the kind with tears, like on TV. But honestly, something stops me. I do not want to dive back into these memories, where uncertainty was a constant. You see for yourself, of course. Miranda shrugged and called Anthony to breakfast. But now Anthony bought a toy car and is as happy as his real car had never been. Alex took him in his lap, pressed him so hard that the carcass became hot, and he slipped out of the embrace closer to the sandwich and a chocolate drink. Miranda's phone rang. She hurried to pick it up and was pleased to hear Jenna's voice. You'll have to hold him until 4 o'clock. Please. I'm in town. There's just this thing. I have to come over right away. Jenna sounded guilty and relieved. After all, there wasn't much time before 4 o'clock p.m., okay. But please don't make any more plans. The child is very bored. She decided to appeal to her conscience, but then she remembered it was a waste of time. Thank you, said Jenna on the run, and her voice fell silent. Mom showed up. Alex's eyes flashed with contempt. He looked at Anthony and didn't understand how he could be neglected. Yeah, she promised to pick him up at 4. Not a sigh of relief. She doesn't tire of the child's presence. But the fact that he was a stranger frightened her. There was little that could happen. Maybe he had allergies or other illnesses she should know about. And she had no experience with children, which also frightened her. I'll wait too. It's interesting to see the other side of this person. I've seen more than enough of these ladies in my childhood. Alex looked at Miranda's contented face and wanted to stay even more. It is good that you will stay. I am uneasy about all this. I have not really slept. Miranda lost her eyes and looked at Anthony. He was asleep at the table. Sleeping, look. Is there such a thing? She took another look at his closed eyes and smiled. It happens, so go get him a bed. I'll get it now. Alex took the boy in his arms and tucked him into bed. Jenna really was in a hurry. She had come from out of town and wanted to pick up Anthony. Still, she had some conscience left, but on the way to pick up her son, her ex-husband called her and told her to meet him urgently. William's voice was trembling, but he flatly refused to talk on the phone. He had arranged to meet her at a coffee shop, and Jenna rushed to him as fast as she could. It seemed to her that he wanted her back, that there were few things in life. But his voice was shaky and agitated. Maybe he missed Anthony. Maybe he wanted to take him for a visit. That would be good for Jenna. After all, she had already spent all of his alimony that had come 3 days ago. The girl walked to the cafe and saw her ex-husband. He was sitting with a bottle of whiskey surrounded by expensive snacks. William looked good, even great compared to when he had left her. He was wearing an expensive jacket, under which he could see a beautiful wool sweater on his hand glittered with an expensive watch. A wedding ring glittered on his finger. He had put on a lot of weight, but it didn't spoil him at all. Anna raised her eyebrows in surprise. After all, living with her, he looked like a rusty bicycle. He smelled of expensive perfume, and when she caught these pleasant notes, Jenna felt dizzy. Get in. A not very kind look came over her. Jenna sat down frightened, and inspecting the exquisite chair, did not stifle, uttered a good life, however. I like it myself. William answered with a kind of superiority and drank a glass. Why did you call me? Did you have no one to drink with? Jenna made a silly show of doing him a favor. William exhaled a long breath with a wicked smile on his face and answered, I can always find someone to drink with. Besides, I've had a drink with you more than once. What kind of a fool have I been? Tell me, how did you trick me so cleverly that I paid alimony for another man's child for so many years? William looked at Jenna, drilling her with a glance, and goosebumps ran down her body like a stranger's child. You what? Don't pretend like that. I finally got around to getting a paternity test. Is that why you asked Anthony to pick you up from daycare? Jenna started flashing back, and she got mad at him for being so mean. How could you do such a thing? She blurted without thinking, and then added your test is invalid. It's your baby. It looks just like you. Jenna's cheeks flushed, but she didn't want to admit she'd cheated. Oh, stop playing the comedy. Would you look at yourself in the mirror? Look red as a tomato. Do you even know whose baby this is? William was really pissed off, and Jenna toned it down. Whose baby is it? What do I care? I'm fine with my own baby. If it makes no difference to you. Why did you call me? It slipped out of Jenna's tongue. She wasn't thinking clearly, and she had a foreboding sense of irrevocable finality. I called you here to tell you that I'm suing for damages. You'll pay me back, every penny of my money. William said this with undisguised pleasure. And then he finished his drink. What money? You were married to me. Jenna even shook when she imagined the amount she'd have to pay back. You tricked me, Jenna missold me. Now it's time to give it all back. And that's not counting the fact that I've been thinking a lot about my son, which, as it turns out, I don't have. What were you thinking? You never loved him. Jenna looked at William with disdain, dropping her one and only. Trump. I could see why I didn't love him, though I missed him and thought about him. I sent him money every time. Do you love him? Do you love your son as a mother? And where is he, if it's not a secret? None of your business. Jenna became short of breath and stormed out of the cafe even faster than she went in. Where are they going to get all this money now? And what will they do to me if I don't pay? Go to jail. And what would I live on now? With genuine sadness, Jenna pondered anxiously. A lot of problems were on her mind with the loss of her only income. Added to all the problems was the monthly installment payment on the purchase of a tablet for Jacob. And then there's Anthony, who needs to be fed at least occasionally and something to pay for daycare. Jenna was thinking of moving in with Jacob, who was making his own living from odd jobs at the construction site. But what about Anthony, who had turned from a source of income into a real burden? Jenna began to think about giving up her child, justifying herself mentally with her plight and unhappy fate. And with these thoughts, the broken woman crossed the threshold of the entryway, where her feet had not led her at all. Anthony was still asleep when Jenna knocked on the door. Miranda and Alex looked at each other. Let her come in. In a stern voice, Alex said, Now let's see what she is like. He spoke in a whisper, but the loud voice was as if it were coming out on its own. In the hallway, the quiet voices of the women began to be heard, and a woman who had been killed by her own problems entered. Jenna stared at Alex as if he were a ghost. You loudly, said the man, oblivious to the sleeping Anthony. Alex, Jenna said in a trembling voice and hugged him. I didn't expect to see you under these circumstances. This is my sister Jenna. We were just talking about our family. Wow, Alex couldn't believe his eyes. But he was very happy to see you. Miranda was stunned with surprise, and I could not find the words. So, is that Anthony my nephew? Yes, he turns out to be your nephew. Jenna unintentionally forgot about the elements in her speech and looked at her brother with interest. I wouldn't recognize you on the street, she said quietly, remembering what he looked like the last time I saw him. He was just a teenager then, thin and uncommunicative, like all the children in their family. Come on, tell me about your life. Don't be shy. I can see that you have problems, and not small ones. You are bringing up your child by yourself. Alex was not angry, but the joy of the meeting began to change into a worrisome state. Yes, alone. You can't expect any help there. You know, I don't communicate with my relatives. I don't know who lives on which side. Come to the table. if that's the case. Miranda came to her senses and decided to show hospitality. Alex sat down at the table and asked Jenna about the baby, marriage, and other things, to which she reluctantly responded. My husband left me for someone else when Anthony was a year old. He and I have been living alone ever since. And if I have to run errands, I have no one to leave him with. And the father does not help. Alex shifted his eyebrows a little, and his forehead deepened funny wrinkles. No, he doesn't. And I'm not asking him for help. Since he doesn't want the baby, I don't want to impose. Jenna tried her best to make herself feel sorry for him, and she was good at it. What do you mean? Ask him for alimony. After all, if you can't manage it yourself, does your child walk around in holy shoes? Or doesn't it bother you as well as him? Alex's joyful emotion quickly passed, and resentment returned. Jenna shed a tear and said, in a shaky voice, "That's easy for you to say. Do you even know what it's like to raise a child alone? What good is filing for child support when all he does is drink and not work? And he refuses to have the baby. He says it's not his. And Anthony's shoes came off on the way here, and I don't carry a spare. All right, I'm sorry, I really don't know your ins and outs. Where do you work?" Alex did not stop asking questions. He often thought of his relatives, but he preferred to live in the hope that they were well. Though they did not look for a meeting with him either. I don't work. I've tried many times, but it's so hard. A schedule to fit in with Anthony. And I don't even talk about sick leave. In any organization, a second sick leave is tantamount to dismissal. Anthony loves to be sick, as Jenna sadly told me. It's like a vicious circle. What do you live on? I joined the conversation, not thinking that her silence from the outside might look like indifference to other people's troubles. I work here and there, here and the weekend to work in another city. But I hardly manage to earn any bread. Jenna got up from the table when she heard that Anthony was awake and went to him, pretending to be a loving, caring mother. His awakening was most welcome. After all, who was she working in another city, and for cents too? Jenna hadn't figured it out yet. What was your job there? A voice came from the other town. I worked there as a construction worker. But I never got my paycheck. I had to go back for Anthony. I've been torturing you enough as it is, and my heart aches for him. He's just a baby. Well, you probably will be transferred to the card if it is not a problem now, said Miranda, to cheer up the unhappy woman. Let's hope so, said Jenna, and began to dress the baby's tails with gifts. Yeah, that's not very human. We met and went their separate ways. Let me at least walk you to the store and get you some groceries, Anthony, since I'm his uncle after all. What do you think? I need help. I can do anything. You know me, honey. They recollected their difficult childhood, remembered their village, where I was fortunate enough to be born. It was a village far from the city, and it was abandoned by everyone. Only a few houses were occupied by people, either out of hopelessness or out of unwillingness to change something in their lives. Superstition and darkness flourished in the village. The nearest hospital was more than 100 miles away, and many of the people there had only heard of it. There was a larger village 5 miles away. The children walked to school there. Their relatives lived there, and the children often dropped in to visit them. Subsequently, the children stayed with them. Mother and father often drank. Almost every day their mother, Wendy, would one day remove her laundry from a metal wire that was strung specially for that purpose. Black clouds appeared outside, and the woman was in a hurry to get the clothes off before they got wet with rain. She was used to cheating living natural conditions and knew that a minute's delay could add to the work, so a thunderstorm did not frighten Wendy. However, lightning struck somewhere very close by, and Wendy on the wire shook. Surprisingly, not only did she not die, but that she saw her past life. Yeah, saw it all clearly, she said. Like in a past life, I threw myself off a cliff, for I ended this life by suicide. This life, some voices told me, I would spend in poverty, and I would have many children. And so it turned out. Having had 7 children, Wendy continued to drink. Her husband sometimes traveled to the neighboring village to work, but his salary went all to sugar, from which they made moonshine. Alex, remembering this, smelled an unpleasant odor that was ever present in every corner of their house, which was falling apart before his eyes. The memory made him shiver and even gave him a headache, like when he was a child from that sour smell. When his mother's heart gave out and she died, Alex remembered them taking her dead. The hospital in their car. There was no morgue in their village. It was very hot and the old car broke down on the way. For a long time, they took turns on the road, trying to stop cars that rarely passed. My little sister didn't get out. She sat in the back seat next to her dead mother and cried, even though the smell was unbearable and the car had to open not only the windows but also the doors. After my mother died, my father took out a survivor's pension. Some things began to appear in the house, but once married again, my father changed his mind to move with the children to a neighboring village and gave them away like puppies, began to live with his new wife and new baby in his wife's house on the child allowance and spouse's disability pension. Alex also remembered his little brother, Kevin, who had been hit on the head by a horse with a hoof. They took him to the hospital and the wound was stitched up safely. The boy lost a lot of blood and took a long time to recover from the injury. According to Jenna, Kevin went to the big city. There he married safely and recently became a father. "How happy I am for him," Alex said, wiping away a tear furtively. Jenna gave Alex his phone number and he immediately called his brother. "I didn't recognize him." Alex glowed this happiness to hear from a relative he was especially close to. Kevin couldn't come to his senses of happiness for a long time. And then he invited them to visit, and Alex promised to come soon. That's the way the day is today. I saw my sister and talked to my brother. On the way, they stopped at the store where Alex bought a whole bag of sweets for his nephew. As he crossed the threshold of Jenna's apartment, he immediately undressed and wanted to get to work. But there were no tools in Jenna's house. How could that be? Do you have a screwdriver? Not even at home. Alex wanted to tighten a socket in the hallway that had fallen out. No. Why would I have tools? My husband took them with him. Jenna sighed again and put the kettle to boil. It's messy in here. Sis, no offense. Husband's gone, so what the hell? But you could have cleaned it up. Alex looked at the mess and was horrified. He was a tidy man. We, despite the fact that he lived alone, always took the time to clean up and tried not to litter at all, cleaning everything at once. When I had to clean, I would run to one job or the other. Also, the devil litter all day long. Jenna looked sternly at Anthony and snatched the gingerbread from his hands, saying that you have to eat in the kitchen, and you eat wherever. How many times do I have to say it? Jenna didn't like to be rebuked for being unclean. Even though it was true, she took offense. Anthony cried and clung to Uncle Alex. Why are you hiding your anger on a child? Look at the gas stove. It is filled with grease. What's Anthony got to do with it? And the floor is so dirty that your socks stick. Alex looked at his sock and was horrified. Such socks do not put in the boot. You go ahead and do it. I'll come tomorrow night after work. And he didn't take it out on the kid. It's not his fault. It's not his fault you messed up the house. Alex stroked Anthony on the head and took off his socks and put on his shoes. Jenna remained silent. She wanted to say something back to her brother, but she already had a plan in her head, so she nodded silently. Alex continued to call Miranda, but she became annoyed that after work almost every day Alex stopped by to see his sister, explaining that her house was on the way. On the way home from Jenna, Alex called me and told me the whole front of the job he had once again redone. At first, she was quiet, understanding that he was helping his sister. But when he decided to spend his day off there too with his tool in his arms, the girl told him everything. It is not enough that you go home from work, tired, and do whatever you have to do. So now you're going to work there on the weekends too. What does she do, I wonder? Do you know? Jenna left for work today. Again, I didn't want to tell you that. She asked me to stay with Anthony for a couple of days. Alex sounded guilty. She felt sorry for him. Think about it. What kind of job is it? All week she rests, and on weekends she works. Miranda was furious, but restrained herself. And why are you sitting there? Come to my place with Anthony. Yes, I wanted to make some repairs in the room to please Jenna. Alex sincerely wanted her life to get better and thought it would be a good fit for her. And he felt even more sorry for Anthony, who had stuck to him for this short time and kept his mother busy with questions about his uncle. "And you don't want to do me a nice thing. Maybe I need your help too." She didn't know what she could think of to get Alex to come. "Where am I going to go? Why did you come by yourself? I don't think she'll mind. Just for Anthony to sit down. I'll put up the wallpaper. I bought it already. I wish she'd mind, and I won't mind. If someone comes over and fixes it for me, all right, I'll be there. Tell me the address." And she got dressed and called a cab. It was getting dark outside. When she arrived at the place, she was very indignant. "I'm sorry, of course, she's your sister. But I get the feeling that she hasn't tried to clean here. She's the one who cleaned up. You should have seen what it was like when I first came in here." Alex didn't stick up for Jenna, realizing that Miranda was right. "That's what I do for the carcass. It's a shame about the boy. He'd be lost with her." Alex rolled up his sleeves and wanted to begin to repair. "Are you out of your mind at night? Let's have dinner and go to sleep. Although there's nowhere to sleep." "Where do you sleep, baby?" asked Anthony. The boy sat on the cot. "I would have loved a cot when I was a kid. You have not seen my bed." Alex laughed, but Miranda didn't like it. "I won't sleep here. I don't see such a need. I'm going home with Anthony to my place. And you do your repairs at least all night. I'll call you tomorrow if you don't mind." Alex didn't mind. It was, in his opinion, the right decision. Jenna, at this difficult time, was already lounging in Jacob's arms. She liked this young man terribly, and they were lying on the huge couch, watching an adventure movie, enjoying the idyll and peace. Jenna cooked a delicious TikTok recipe dinner, and Jacob remarked that she was a good hostess. She was especially pleased to hear this after all the rebukes she had heard from her brother. "Where is your son?" "I left him with his friend again." "That's a nice friend you've got. Why did you introduce her?" Jacob liked to joke like that. "No, my brother." "My brother showed up, and Jenna told me how they met." Wow, Jacob wondered. Does he want to marry this Miranda too? He asked with a sly look in his eyes. Maybe he does. What else can they do but get married? Yes, have children. She's not a bad girl, she's kind. Jenna thought about it and looked at Jacob. "Why did you ask all of a sudden?" Jacob was so perturbed. "I am thinking of getting married myself. It is good to live like this, with the house all ready and cleaned and someone waiting." Jenna bloomed and smiled and kissed Jacob. Alex didn't fall asleep until morning. He was alone, and he began to tear off the wallpaper wherever he could without making noise. After all, it was late. Jenna lived on the first floor, but Alex didn't dare move the furniture. The cupboards were full with clothes. He had no energy left at all. Alex came home from work later than usual and was already literally collapsing from fatigue. Miranda called frequently. She felt insanely sorry for Alex because she knew how tired he was at work. He had opened his own sawmill 6 months ago, and the work process was not yet fully back to normal. Their staff was small, and he often had to do a lot of chores. The proceeds so far had only been enough to cover the cost of spending on equipment. Alex had to take out a loan, which he dreamed of paying off in the near future. As a young man, he broke his back and often suffered from pain. So he visited Miranda's office from time to time, where he met her. "Go to bed already." She spoke in a sleepy voice into the phone receiver. "Tomorrow I'll help you." But Alex did not want to burden her with unnecessary work and continued fiddling until everything was ready at 10 o'clock a.m. Miranda and Anthony barely got through to the sleeping man. Alex opened the doors and invited them in. "Have you been working all night? Also, you can't." In the end, Miranda changed clothes and got to work too, despite all Alex's objections. By the afternoon of the next day, the walls were taped. The ceiling had been painted, and the floor of the room had good new linoleum, which Alex's comrade had gone to pick up. At his request, the men quickly screwed the baseboard to the walls, and the room was a sight to behold. Anthony kept getting underfoot trying to help. Although no one was mad at him, Alex's patience ran out, and Miranda took him outside to finally get the job done. Alex thanked his friend for his help and went to see him off in the hallway. His companion Ben threw on his jacket, and they exchanged a few words. He opened the door. At that moment, an unfamiliar man approached the threshold and smirked ironically. Asked Jenna. "She's not here," Alex replied, glancing at his guest with an appraising glance. "She's gone to work." "Work? Where to, if it's not a secret?" The man laughed. "And what makes you laugh so much? Who do you think you are?" Alex didn't like his behavior, but he tried to be restrained. "I am the husband, her ex, William," and the man held out his hand in surprise to Alex. Alex shook his hand and said his name. So that's how Anthony's father Alex looked at the man, who at these words changed his face and said, "I know," as it turned out. Or perhaps, Father Anthony, you, William, were looking Alex straight in the eye, continuing to smirk Alex as if he had been steamed with boiling water. From the surprise, he was even confused, but quickly came to his senses and with a laugh said, "No, I can't be his father. I'm his own uncle, Jenna's brother." The brother said thoughtfully to William, "Where were you before?" "That I never saw you. It just so happened. Fate has scattered us. We did not communicate for a long time. And now you're in touch." William kept his eyes on Alex, thinking about something else. "We started the other day. Alex didn't understand what he wanted, and he asked me directly, 'Did you want to?' You're here now. He showed up. Jenna said you left her and your son for someone else?" "Yeah, I did. You don't know your sister very well. Except it turns out I didn't have a son. I went to court to get back the alimony I've been paying her all along." I could tell from William that he wasn't lying. His image didn't match Jenna's story of the hopeless alcoholic from Wisconsin. Alex loved the truth. He hated being lied to, especially by people close to him. He never forgave deception. So he interrupted William and asked him to come into the apartment. "You what? You're making repairs on her too?" surprisingly asked the cheating husband. "I wanted to do something for Anthony, and you're not his father." "No, I'm not." "Did I do the forensics?" "I only paid 5 years alimony for someone else's child for nothing. But I see that the child didn't get anything either." "What did she spend the money on?" "I transferred so much to her that I could have bought a new apartment. And I don't even want to talk about the repairs she could have made. So that's it," Alex said quietly and got very upset. William looked at the apartment where he used to live and said sadly nothing has changed in all these years. Only Anthony's bed has disappeared. Where is Anthony? At least he's not in an orphanage. Jenna wouldn't mind sending her son away. She's a real mom. The men talked for a quarter of an hour, and William, coming to the door, said, "Tell her I won't charge her any money anyway. It's a nuisance, but she won't see any more alimony from me either. Let her look for her own father. Here, don't give her much credit. I understand her sister, but she's a good liar. That's just the beginning." Alex looked devastated. He had not expected such a deception from his sister. Sleepless nights for repairs, and exhausted him. And now there's also this lie he naively believed. Wanting to help, William stepped out into the hallway just as Miranda and Anthony and approached the apartment. Anthony recognized Daddy and was overjoyed. He immediately hugged him and in a pitiful voice began to say, "Daddy, Daddy. Have you come? I knew you would come." Tears ran down his eyes, as well as in the eyes of William, who for some reason, at the sight of Anthony, became emotional, and in front of everyone squatted down and hugged the child. William sat like that in Anthony's arms for almost a minute. But then, standing up, he looked at Alex with green eyes and said, "You see what she has done. I'll never forgive her for that." William turned away and practically ran out of the driveway. Daddy, Daddy was screaming and crying. Anthony ripping Alex out of his arms, who had to hold the baby by force. And there were no words in the world with which to calm him. Miranda was at a loss, and not understanding anything, somehow took the child into the apartment. What on earth was this? What kind of family is this anyway? Why should they make fun of a child like that? She could not restrain her emotions, and not paying any attention to Alex's broken state, began to gather her things which had been left. "Where are you going?" asked Alex Miranda, watching as the child tried to open the front door and run after her father to his home. What a madhouse! The mother has gone away to unknown places. The father came and went. Where does she go? Look, it's the middle of the night. I have to work tomorrow, just like you. We, unlike her, don't work only on weekends. Go. Alex said, brushed the dust off the TV, and turned it on. Are you going to sleep here, or are you going to live here? She continued to say something, but Alex heard her less and less. He felt a strong pain in his chest and went very pale. His face jumped up from his face. Miranda asked to close the door behind her and pull Anthony away. It seemed to her that Alex was pretending not to hear her on purpose, so she decided to move closer. When she realized something was wrong with him, she freaked out and called an ambulance. Anthony was also frightened at the sight of the doctors. She didn't have to actively reassure him. When the ambulance left with Alex, they decided to leave with the child to their home and had already called a cab. But then Jenna showed up. She came in tipsy, waving a bag of bread and a bottle of milk. As if nothing had happened, she hung her outer clothes on the hooks and went into the room. Miranda sat silent and threw herself into a hug. Ma, Anthony broke the silence. Wow, here's the brother giving and you're here, Jenna exclaimed in a huffy voice, looking at Miranda. Squinting one eye, Miranda got up from the couch and went to the door. Where are you going? But to have a chat. We are almost relatives. You are a relative, I see. Miranda went outside, called a cab, and went home. She couldn't find herself and called the hospital, where she was told that Alex had had a heart attack. It could have been a heart attack, but thank God, it didn't. It was Friday again, but Alex was never discharged. He had to wait for Monday, because on that day the doctors had rounds, and Alex was a candidate for discharge. During that week, he had gotten a month's sleep, and his strength was coming back to him. The hospital was close to the clinic where Miranda worked, and it was convenient for her to visit Alex every day. For some reason, she also felt guilty that the boy's heart had failed. Miranda apologized to him several times and decided from now on to be more attentive to his emotions and feelings. She has been prying into his mind for a long time. What had Anthony's father told him? But Alex would not tell. He was uncomfortable saying these things. It was only before he was discharged that he confessed, to avoid misunderstanding. And on Monday, Alex was surprised and delighted when he saw his nephew at Miranda's house. Anthony, what is he doing here? It is not Friday, is it? Miranda showed him into the kitchen and told him that Jenna came by and left her son with the view again on Friday. That now Miranda just has to babysit him on the weekend? You know, I was so mad, but I couldn't say no. I don't know where else she would take him. I think she'd leave him on the street with no qualms about it. Don't get upset yourself, stop worrying so much, and don't speak softly so he won't hear you. He was already used to them, so he wasn't particularly worried without his mother. Why aren't you at work? It's Monday. Hasn't she picked him up since Friday? Alex was ready to kill his sister. Come on. Miranda shook her hand. You're sick, and the baby what to do? I don't know. I took a vacation. You wanted to go in summer. Alex remembered. And now, because of me, the whole vacation will go to waste. You shouldn't have done that. And what else can I do? Miranda said angrily. We cannot go on like this. I'm going to meet her. I'll talk to her. Alex got agitated again. What was the use of talking to her? You want a second heart attack. She should be deprived of her parental rights, and that's it. How much stress can you put on a child? She spoke firmly, but she was trembling inside. She was actually fragile. And if it weren't for this egregious situation, she never would have made a decision like this. Alex dialed Jenna's number and couldn't believe his ears. She had been drinking heavily and acting defiantly. What are you trying to tell me how to live my life, little brother? Don't tell me what a bad mother you are. All his appeals to his conscience, she literally laughed, mockery, and his good attitude to her. What did she think? I did the repairs and that's it. I don't need your repairs and I don't need the baby. No one loved me as a child. Why do I have to be beholden to someone and love someone? Jenna made a lot of gibberish, after which it became clear to Alex that she was not going to take the baby away. And according to her, she was well settled in another city. I had already decided to give it up, and then you showed up with your gifts and repairs. If you like it, then keep it. And if you don't want him, take him to an orphanage. That's all I said," shouted hysterical Jenna and turned off the phone. Miranda went pale. She listened to her hysterical voice while she did so. "There's no cure for that. She can't be helped anymore," Alex said and looked into Miranda's eyes. "You will marry me, you will take me with child." The words came from his lips. Miranda was a little embarrassed to hear the offer. "I guess I will," she said quietly. "You mean you have doubts?" "I don't understand her, Alex." "No, I don't doubt it. Of course I will. You're kind, hardworking, you love children, don't you? What else do you need to be happy?" Miranda said it in a doomed way, and Alex felt that he was forcing her to marry out of pity. "Miranda, are you really ready to marry a person you have known for less than a month without love? Why are you picking on me? Why immediately without love? And when did you realize you loved me?" Alex looked into her eyes and furrowed his brow, feigning a menacing look, so that Miranda would surely not deceive him. "The first time I liked you creepily at the hospital, when you were playing with the baby, I thought you were the sweetest man in the world. And when you went to the hospital, I thought I might lose you. That's when I knew I loved you. I love you very much." Miranda's tears rolled and Alex, hugging her. Jenna didn't show up for over 3 months. Alex had gotten married by then and had put their place on the market to buy a house together. They gained custody of Anthony, who quickly became accustomed to a quiet life and remembered his mother less and less often. He missed her, but did not want to live with her. Miranda and Alex never said anything bad to him about his mother. At first, they even hoped that she would come to her senses. But no miracle happened. When custody called her in the 4th month of her absence, she easily rejected the child, guessing that Anthony was living with Alex. She did so in the presence of her roommate Jacob, who by this time had had enough of her, and easily got rid of her in short order by simply throwing her out the door. "I left the baby because of you," screamed Jenna, trying to hit him. "And you expected me to live with a woman who abandoned her own child." Jacob laughed in her face. "You said you wanted to get married yourself. You tricked me. I still do, but certainly not to you. Get out of my house and don't come around here again." Jacob threw the last bag of stuff out the door, and after Jenna started knocking, he promised to call the police. Jenna calmed down as the realization dawned on her that he only tolerated her because of the gifts and as a free cleaner in the apartment. She went silent. She didn't even have the money to get back to her little apartment with one room renovated. Standing on the road, she pondered where she would go to work and imagined herself in different professions. And then a truck driver, who was also lonely, stopped and took her even farther away from her hometown. Jenna lived with him for 4 years. He was a divorced man and elderly. So when he died, his children quickly drove Jenna out of the apartment. Jenna didn't want to leave. They hired a truck for her at their own expense and sent her off with all her efforts back home. Jenna gave a concert there, laying on the floor and declaring that she wasn't going anywhere. She was used to the area and had made a couple of friends who were just like herself. So when this misfortune happened to her, her imaginary friends simply turned their backs on her. It had been a long time since Jenna had seen her son. Her outlook on life has changed a bit. She was tired of dragging around other people's houses, and realizing that it was a thankless job, Jenna decided to get her own house. She got a job at the market as a vendor, and one day, she saw a happy family passing by. Jenna ran up to them and even startled Anthony. "Son, it's me, your mother." "Do you remember me?" Anthony pulled away and his brother stood in front of him and said, "Auntie, we have a different mother. Did you make a mistake? What did you tell him about me?" Jenna looked at Lex and Miranda in the eyes with reproach and hatred. "Did you leave me?" said Anthony suddenly. "No, my son, it's not like that. I left you out of love. Where I went, there were no conditions for you." Jenna ingratiatingly looked her grown-up son in the eyes and hoped that he would forgive her, as he always had. "You abandoned me, betrayed me, and now you say it all happened because of some love thing." Anthony turned away and walked forward, taking his little brother's hand. Jenna did eventually find out their address and came to visit a couple of times with gifts, which Anthony didn't accept and kicked them out the door. Once she got out, Jenna never came to see them again. She didn't come not because her son didn't forgive her, but because it hurt her to see the family happiness she had once sacrificed for the love she had never really felt for anyone.